Good.
Hi, Ms.
All right.
Visnick. Yeah, we are ready to go. Do you want to do the preamble?
I'm ready to do the preamble. I'm prepared to do the preamble, especially because I'm the one who's remote today.
Okay, go for it. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay, thank you. I will maybe ask you to do attendance of who's in the room because my BevCam view is not so good. I don't want to leave anybody out. So welcome everybody. Today is October 23rd. This is the standing meeting on finance and facilities, and we are meeting today in a remote setup. As is pretty obvious by the fact that I'm not sitting in the room. Thank you, BevCam, for recording and broadcasting for us. And we are meeting in this hybrid remote model using a remote meeting application, which allows for remote participation and the public to access the open portions of our meeting, which actually in FNF there are none. Please ignore the dog barking in the background. Beginning in June of 2021 with the Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which have been twice extended and now further extended through March 31st of 2025, local governments and boards are granted the provisions to, amongst other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum in the chair to be physically present. It asks our body to use technology to be safe and allow for access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation of members, and through that permission, the chair and the quorum would have to be physically present when this act and its extensions expire. So this is FNF. And joining us this evening are definitely some members of our school administration. And I am going to ask you, Ms. Abell, to please name who you see in the room, if you could be so kind.
Absolutely. We are joined this evening in person by school committee member and Ward 4 Rep. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
We are also joined by our City Council President, Julie Flowers.
Thank you.
Our new Finance Director, Emma Puglisi.
Here.
Our Executive Director of Operations, Aaron Brown.
Here.
Our Superintendent, Dr. Sue Chorocek.
Here.
Our Resident Representative, Paul Manzo.
Here.
Also present are Mark Thomas from BHS and our Assistant Superintendent, Dorothy Flaherty. And we have a number of wonderful students in the audience as well as their caregivers. Oh, and I'm also here, but I'm just Vanna White. Thanks.
And we have online Food Service Director, Ms. Leal. I don't see anybody else online. Rachel, if I'm missing somebody else, will you unmute and say so?
I will monitor the wait room to see if anyone else joins us and let you know.
Fantastic. And so for voting members, I have Mr. Manzo and Mr. Silva, Dr. Silva, and myself this evening, correct?
That is correct. Mr. Weaver and Ms. Coelho are absent.
Okay,
And Mr. Copeland.
fantastic. Our roll call will be pretty quick then. Thank you, Mr. Manzo and Dr. Silva for being there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have our meeting. So I am going to get my script off the screen. I'm going to share my screen, and so everybody can see the agenda. And I will attempt to be the, as I like to say it, the Vanna of the evening, and flip through the items that we need to get through. I'll let everybody know my second monitor is off to my right and a little higher, so you'll often see me looking up in the air. I'm looking at my second monitor to find things that we either want or need. So first order of business is our voting on our meeting minutes from our last meeting. So I'm switching tabs. Actually, Ms. Abell, will you give me a thumbs up? Can you see my screen? All right, fantastic, thank you. So the meeting minutes are on, from our last meeting, are on the screen. I believe Dr. Silva and Mr. Manzo, you were both at that meeting. I'm looking for a motion to approve these meeting minutes.
Motion.
Second.
And do either of you have any corrections or things that were omitted?
No, not for me.
All good.
Okay, fantastic, then we'll call the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Okay, I did not hear him. And myself, yes. Okay, fantastic. That tab gets to go away. Our next item on our agenda is an update from our Executive Director of Operations. And so let me jump to the top of this file. We're not ready to say thank you yet. And I'll try to make it a little bit bigger, I think. Maybe not. Maybe this is the size you get, Miss Brown. And then when you're ready and you want me to switch slides, please just say next slide.
Okay, so you can move one slide up to the first with the agenda on it. Tonight, we talked about at our first meeting last month about bringing different students and faculty here to this meeting to go beyond just the numbers. That this committee always often hears just about the numbers, but kind of the whole picture and the whole story. So we're here tonight. We have some fabulous students and Mr. Thomas from the high school who are here to kind of follow up with this committee and look at talking about the lights and stands over at the high school. So they're going to share some information with us in a moment. And then we're going to move to Miss Leal, and she's going to share some updates on food services. And then we have some items typical for approval, including a clerical substitute rate and so forth, and then our usual financial reporting. So if we could start with Mr. Thomas and the gentlemen that are here. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And I think Mr. Thomas said a lot of you had presented at City Council initially, and so it's nice to kind of see this full circle.
Yeah, thanks for having me tonight. Just wanted to give a quick update on the lights and stands at 40 Field. We're entering our third week of games and practices under the lights, and it's been an overwhelming success. A lot of hard work by a lot of people to get us to this point, so appreciative of our Public Works Department, everyone from central office, and then a lot of the legwork from Mr. Wood, our athletic director, as well. So we've had great turnout at all our events. Every fall sports team that plays on the turf has gotten at least one night game. It was culminated by our homecoming football game. We traditionally haven't had a homecoming football game, so the student voice really wanted to get that off the ground, and we were able to have that. We estimated probably between 400 and 500 students attended that game, along with members of the band, cheerleading squad, and football team, of course. So overwhelmingly successful as far as turnout and just an overall good feel. And excuse me, more important than anything, no issues, everybody in a good mood, happy to be there. So overall, really happy with how things have gone. More importantly than me speaking here is I brought some gentlemen with me here who spoke to City Council on behalf of getting this off the ground, and they're going to give you a nice update on where they stand. So.
And maybe, Lorinda, while they're coming up here to speak, if you could move to the next slide, just has another picture of that homecoming. Yeah. Gentlemen.
Good evening, members of the school committee in the city of Beverly. My name is Connor Conley, and I'm a captain of the Beverly boys soccer team and a senior at Beverly High School. Adding lights and bleachers has been an experience I'll forever be grateful for. The stands and lights have allowed my team to host a real senior night, not the usual senior morning. For us seniors, we have waited a very long time for our senior night, and being able to do it under the lights will be a core memory forever, and I thank everyone involved for giving us that. Playing under the lights so far has been game-changing, as it allows for more people to come to our games to support. Personally, many extended family members were able to come to night games because it fit their schedule better. Looking up into a sea of people at our games is something I would have never imagined at Beverly High School. Attending games as a fan at Beverly High School has always been a difficult task with our practice schedules. Since the addition of the bleachers and lights, attending games and supporting the other teams have become so much easier. We were able to play a game in Salem and make it back to the high school to watch the girls' soccer team play under the lights. Without the lights, that would have never been possible, let alone a thought in my mind. Having a comfortable seat is always nice when watching a game. Having the chance to sit down after a long day and watch a game comfortably without standing and leaning up against an old rusty fence is also a nice addition. Getting to sit down with my friends and watch the game all together rather than being spread up and down the fence that lines the field hoping that I would be able to see is no longer an issue. Grandparents coming to watch their grandchildren play finally have a nice place to sit down and be comfortable. The benefits that the bleachers provide are often overlooked, but they are just as impactful as the lights. The field is now used as a community hub rather than a patch of turf. We were able to host a homecoming football game under lights just before our homecoming dance the next day. I have never seen so many people at a high school sporting event in 4 years here at Beverly High School. In that moment, I realized that the school had finally gained a valuable resource that everyone can use. Just recently at our NEC title game, we hosted a 50th anniversary game for our program. We were able to get many alumni down to celebrate and use the bleachers to our advantage. We have gotten the youth, alumni, and members of the community involved in a way I never thought was possible. As my senior soccer season comes to an end, I would like to thank everyone involved again for getting the lights and stands up at incredible speed and giving the teams that are currently or will be playing on the turf an incredible opportunity. I'd like to recognize every member of this great community that spent hours, weeks, and years advocating for this project to be approved. The impact will be forever embedded in my high school memories. To Mr. Thomas and our athletic director, Mr. Wood, I would like to thank you for all you've done, working endlessly to get every team some games under the lights. It has been incredibly special watching the community come together these past couple of weeks supporting every team that plays. Thank you again, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Beverly High School.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maverick Janess, and I'm a senior at Beverly High School and also a member of the football team. I'm here today to reflect on the addition of the lights and bleachers around 40 Field at Beverly High and the positive impact these changes have had both on our school and community. Last spring at the City Council meeting, I spoke about how these upgrades would help foster a stronger sense of pride, hard work, and culture in our sports program and school. Now, having experienced the lights and stands in action, I can confidently say they've exceeded everyone's expectations. First, the lights have transformed our practice schedules. The flexibility they provide allows us for evening practices, giving athletes more time after school for other responsibilities. Night games have also brought new excitement, creating safer, more enjoyable conditions and a heightened atmosphere that lifts our team spirit. The stands have become a focal point for the community. Parents and fans can now comfortably watch games, no longer having to stand on the soggy grass against the rusty fence. This has boosted attendance not just from families, but from the student body as well. As Mr. Thomas said, we had about 400 or 500 students at the homecoming football game. The sense of school spirit is alive and well at our home games, with students rallying behind our teams in ways we haven't seen in years. In just a short time, these upgrades have done more than improve game day experiences. They strengthen the connection between Beverly High School and the wider community. The excitement around our sports programs is tangible and has brought us all closer together. To conclude, the lights and bleachers have made a significant impact, enhancing the experience for athletes and spectators alike. They've contributed to a stronger sense of pride and unity, and I believe this momentum will carry on for years to come at Beverly High School. Thank you.
Good evening, school committee. My name is Oliver Sweatman. I'm a senior at BHS and the drum major of the BHS marching band. The introduction of lights and stands at 40 Field has proven to be a massive success, benefiting the band, student athletes, and the entire BHS student body. Every week from September through November, we hold a Thursday night rehearsal from 7 to 9 p.m. For the past 3 years, we've needed to hold our weekly practices on the basketball courts in the field house. And obviously, a basketball court's a little bit different than a football field. While in the field house, student leaders need to spend upwards of 30 to 40 minutes setting up the field house with 50-foot plastic yard lines, taping down hash marks, raising the curtain dividers and basketball hoops, and pushing back the bleachers. Additionally, we are often scheduled to have the field house immediately after volleyball games, which often run late and cut into our rehearsal time. These factors waste a significant amount of time that could be spent working on the halftime show or practicing marching technique. In addition to logistical problems, rehearsing in the field house has posed numerous issues relating to student comfort that interfere with our ability to rehearse. The fieldhouse gets quite hot when you pack in 80-plus people all playing instruments. Additionally, the plastic yard markers have caused innumerable accidents where band members have fallen while trying to execute maneuvers. Being able to rehearse outside under the lights these past 2 weeks has enabled us to practice under the conditions in which we perform and has given us much more time to work instead of wasting time adapting to a basketball court. The October 18th Friday Night Lights game had an electric game day atmosphere that I have not seen in my 3 years attending football games as both a member of the band and a BHS student. The once empty student section stood packed with Beverly football fans, and despite a tough loss, the energy at the game was incredible, with the crowds cheering as the football team ran on the field and the band finally getting to play their halftime show to a full set of stands. The Friday night game proved to be a major success both for the band and for the BHS student body. Nobody enjoys performing to an empty house, and that is far too often the case during Saturday mornings at Herd Stadium. The Friday night game also has logistical benefits for us. Typically, we've had to wake up early to pack our U-Haul full of equipment before our parade over to Herd. Instead, we were able to save valuable time and only had to move our equipment from the school over to the field. Speaking solely from the perspective of a BHS student, I can say that night games under the lights are just more fun. This is partially due to the fact that more people are able to attend that might not have been able to before due to after-school commitments, and they also boost school spirit and morale, valuable qualities within a school community. On behalf of the marching band, I would like to extend my gratitude to the local officials and school administrators who made this happen. The installation of lights and stands at 40 Field has proven immensely beneficial for the entire Beverly community. By continuing to support these facilities, the Beverly School Committee demonstrates their dedication to student activities and their commitment to fostering a positive and vibrant school environment. Thank you.
I should have just let them talk from the beginning. They did a much better job than me. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming tonight and sharing your experiences with us. I
All right,
think,
wait, before, I'm sorry that I'm not there. Before we let Mr. Thomas escape, can I ask about whether every fall sport has had a chance to play under the lights? We heard from a few of them, but I think there's a few more.
Yes, so they are actually at games and practices right now. We did talk to them about coming to speak tonight. And they, every fall sports team that plays on the turf has had the opportunity to play at least one game under the lights.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask, I didn't look around my room, so Dr. Silva and Mr. Manzo, or even Council President Flowers, if you guys have questions, as soon as I finish this one, please feel free to ask your questions. I wish to ask the most controversial, potentially the most controversial question, which I tried to pose to our athletic director last time he was in front of us, relative to what is the plan for how many more games are we going to play under the lights versus playing at Herd Stadium? Is there a plan yet for that?
There is not. This was the only football game this fall that we'll have at the high school. We'll have at least one more home game at Herd next week, and then the playoffs are unknown. You know, those get announced week by week. But as there's no plan to have another football game this fall at the high school.
Fantastic. Then that is a plan. I appreciate that. Thank you.
any other questions?
Miss Abel, you have a question?
I'm also present, not part of the meeting, but the girls' senior night for varsity soccer is tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night,
If
yep.
anyone wants to join under the lights at 6 p.m.
Should be a good time, 6 o'clock.
Cool. All right, Miss Brown.
Okay, so if you could now, thank you all again for coming, we appreciate it. If you can see here, this just kind of outlines the funding that was part of the stands and lights by both the city and the school through ESSER funding and the city funding for a total investment you can see there of $1,050,000 and what the lights cost and what the stands cost. So one of the things that we talked about as our focus for this year, and just in general in our school district, is that sense of belonging. So I think you can see that first, certainly the first games played by everyone seems like a huge success, as well as the homecoming large football game that was last Friday night. And just that sense of belonging that just this has already provided for our entire, not just high school community, but as the student said, involving youth sports and so forth, and just for the community at large. So I think a wonderful addition. We certainly know that it was our first big evening event, so we know there are some kinks to work out in that. But certainly we have to kind of live through that process and figure those out as we go and plan for those for the next time we have a large scale evening event. So huge success, and a huge success in terms of belonging for our community. So next we have our food service director, our amazing Christina Leal, and she's going to give us an update on our food service program across the district tonight. So I will turn it over to you, Christina.
Miss
Thank you so
Leo,
much.
Same offer. When you want me to scroll, please just say.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me tonight. And you can scroll to the next slide. So first, I wanted to show our participation compared to last year through mid-October. And as you can see at every location and throughout the district, we are up in participation in both breakfast and lunch. So our breakfast participation is still at 18.4% as a district, and lunch we're at 60.6%. We're shooting for 70% for lunch, and we're really close at Hannah in the middle school. I would love to see it get up at all those schools. So that is our goal for this year through theme events and other things that I will talk about. But we are trending in the right direction, getting our participation up at all locations. If you go to the next slide.
Can you speak to, before I scroll, why the number 70? Why is your goal 70%?
Well, it's gone up. I don't want to be too aggressive. And so I think it's definitely feasible, especially when you're looking at the middle school that's at 67%. Hannah is right at 70%. With all the elementary schools, we definitely struggle at the high school just because of senior privileges. We lose a large population. I didn't want to be too overly aggressive, so I will take 70%.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see our snack program has done fabulous since last year, and I would love to take credit for it, but I have to give credit to Human Resources that got us staff in. Last year, we had to unfortunately close the snack shack at the high school quite often at the beginning of the year just because we did not have staff. This year, we are staffed, and so as you can see, we've doubled our sales over at the high school just at that location. And then, so combined, we are up almost $6,800 in strictly a la carte sales. The other thing that I wanted to point out is teacher meals. So we are up from 163 teacher meals last year up to 228 this year. So kudos to my staff for making the meals look as delicious as they are, and teachers are buying them. If you go to the next slide. So this is our first year. We are running a fresh fruit and vegetable program at Centerville. We are participating in that. You have to get invited into the program based on USDA guidelines. So this program is strictly separate from the school breakfast program and the National School Lunch Program. And it is completely funded from USDA, so there's no cost to the district or the department. Twice a week, we sampled new fruits and vegetables at Centerville, things that we normally don't serve on the lunch line. We did papayas, kiwis. We are doing dragon fruit next month. Asparagus we did today. It's been really well received from the students. I will tell you, fruit is much more exciting for them than the vegetables are, but they are definitely trying them. And it's exciting to see when they have never tried anything before, having some new items.
All right, I have a question. Are you ready to scroll? I'm sorry. It is really very difficult. I apologize to everybody. My situation tonight is that I need to be remote. So I understand that adds a burden, makes it a little more disruptive as well. So I apologize for that. What are the chances? Is this a pilot? Is there a chance that it will be in the other elementary schools future or?
The way it's determined is based on the identified student population at the schools. So there were 3 schools that were identified last year that could participate in the program. You need to get approval from the principals, get the superintendent involved, everyone. And so there were 3 schools in Centerville opted to try because it's not during lunch, it's not during breakfast, it's during a separate time of the day. It's committing to 2 days a week. So Centerville opted to give it a try this year. I am anticipating next year the same 2 schools as well as Centerville will be included again. And I think with the success, hopefully they will join on as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. So on to the next slide. At all of the schools, we are doing our Harvest of the Month. This is something that Mass Farm to School puts out, and so each month they feature a different produce. The month of September was tomatoes. So Abby Sykes and I went to all the elementary schools and we did a tasting with different heirloom cherry tomatoes as well as pico de gallo. And we talked to all the students about tomatoes, the different kinds of tomatoes during lunch. Well received. I was at 2 and she was at 3 schools. Definitely well received. So we are going to continue with that. For October, the harvest of the month is pears. So we're just kind of featuring different pears on the lines because it's a fruit that they often see. And then in November, we are doing kale. So we will be in the cafeterias again doing a tasting with kale, which we're still working out the details for. On the next slide are fun things that we have done through the district that want to share with everyone. This is the staff, half of the staff from the middle school with their Pizza Chew shirts that I bought for everyone. It was National Cheese Pizza Day, the first week of school, so everyone, and we serve pizza every Wednesday. So that's kind of their uniform now on Wednesdays. The little kids really got a kick out of it and loved the shirts. We did a national or a pancake bar for breakfast for National Pancake Bar. And we had pancakes with fresh strawberries, blueberries, apple cinnamons, bananas. So they got to top them themselves, which was a huge hit in all the schools, high school included. We have an oatmeal bar coming up, similar with all the different toppings to do National Oatmeal Day. I put out a newsletter to all the elementary parents. We have National Nacho Day coming up, and then our Thanksgiving Day lunch. So this is just kind of a fun thing to get that participation number up to 70%. On the next slide, so I don't know if anyone heard over in the spring, the USDA had a final ruling on the nutrition standards. I don't know if anyone heard there was talk about getting rid of flavored milk. So that is not going away. So flavored milk is still here, but next year we have to begin to track our added sugars in cereals, yogurt, and milk. So we're hoping for a reformulation in milk because the current ones will not meet the guidelines with the added sugars that we do have to track. Then there'll be a reduction in 2027 as well as another sodium reduction in 2027. So this is kind of a guideline. This is coming down from the USDA. The final rule, there was no change this year, but things will start to change next year. And the next slide. This is kind of some local produce, beef, and fish that we do purchase from. Our biggest one that we started last year was Red's Best. This is local fish that we get that we serve at all the schools. We do haddock fillets and haddock fish sticks, which is actually really well received. It's great. It's haddock. It pulls it right off of the boat, right off of the vessel where it came from. This is on display in all the cafeterias whenever we do serve fish. As you can see, this one came from Chatham. It tracks it right back to the boat. We are continuing to serve Walden beef burgers at the high school, which is a huge hit. Fresh, local, grass-fed beef. And then these are 3 of the farms that we do get local produce from within the area of New England. On the next slide. So Northeast Food for Schools, this was a grant that came out in 2023 that we applied for and got money for. And this was to procure local non-processed or minimally processed foods to serve in the program. We still have, after last year, they did some reallocation of funds. We got a little bit more funds from other districts that were not spending the money. So they did a reallocation. And so we currently have $11,000 in this grant still to spend. And local is considered anything within 400 miles of the district. So we have that, and there's not been any talk of extending this or reallocating at this time, but I will let you know if that happens. So on the next one is sustainability. We continue to compost back of the house waste through Black Earth, both at the middle school and the high school. They pick up twice a week. We purchase locally whenever possible. We constantly are monitoring our production records, adjusting our prep to make sure we are not overproducing or throwing away any food. And we are exploring alternative vessels to eliminate plastic at all the locations, but especially at the high school where we do use a lot of grab and go, as well as exploring any compostable utensils. And that is all I have.
All right, I'll say, Ms. Leal, I think you are aware that we have the Operational Sustainability Committee meeting with the superintendent of schools. And as part of my role on that committee, I attend a number of meetings with the Mass DEP. And there's a whole group of people who are trying to do sustainability kind of things in their schools. And we meet once a month. And so if you want, we should probably talk about this offline, because there is an entire Google Drive somewhere that's just about compostable silverware. There's another one about moving away from plastic, and it's kind of the schools sharing and trying to learn from each other and take advantage of the mistakes that other people have made. So as you inch closer to those goals, if I can either put you in touch with those people or give you the Google Drive, or you can kind of come on into some of those meetings. Maybe if you have, this is a big joke, if you have time in your day that you're not busy cooking, you could sit on a meeting instead. So, but I think there's a lot of valuable information there again, when we get close enough to actually do that, it would be wonderful if we could learn from other people's mistakes.
Absolutely. And I have some samples of stuff that I will be bringing tomorrow to that meeting. So if you were there, I can share that what I have too. That was just
I do expect to be able to be there tomorrow. So anybody else in the room have any questions for Miss Leal before we let her go enjoy the rest of her evening?
Mr. Manzo has his hand up in the room.
Fantastic, Mr. Manzo.
So I was just wondering, with the lunch participation numbers, what are the other 30 to 40% of the students do for lunch? Are they still bringing lunch?
Some definitely bring lunch. Some use that snack a la carte as their lunch. Unfortunately, they get their popcorn or chips and that's their lunch, or some do not eat. But that's kind of the mix of what they do. But yeah, some definitely still bring lunch from home.
But you still have students who just don't eat anything for lunch.
Yeah.
And then in terms of composting, if a student does bring an outside lunch or outside food, can that be mixed in with the compost?
So we're currently only composting back of the house waste.
Okay.
So it's anything in our kitchens. We are not doing any composting on front of the house currently.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I'll tell you, Mr. Manzo, that we're having some of those conversations in the OSC meetings. And tomorrow, I think that the number of people the number of different organizations that come to that meeting, that is growing. We have somebody from the Solid Waste Committee who will be there. We have somebody from Green Beverly who will be there. And as you know, it's unfortunately not just so easy as to say, okay, we're going to compost. We have contracts that we have to deal with, and we have the additional cost of the pickup. There's a lot of pieces there, but it is definitely being discussed, and I would say it's a little bit in the crosshairs. Maybe it's a little further out, right? It's a longer term goal. And certainly, you've been around long enough to know that any given school has done a pilot. We've done composting in the cafeteria with the student food waste. And that ties right into Nature's Classroom and coming back as sixth graders, having learned about the ORT report. So there's a lot of momentum in that direction. But it's a big hurdle to get over, I guess, is what I'll say. All right, anybody else? Last call for Ms. Leal. Okay, thank you, Ms. Leal.
Thank you, Christina.
All right, Ms. Brown, I scrolled to the next slide.
Okay, so the next slide is one of our items to look at and approve tonight, and this is the clerical substitute compensation, and we haven't looked at this since prior to September of 2023, when we had adjusted the instructional substitute rate. And so our pool of substitutes for our clerical positions is very small. There's, I think, 3 or 4 of them total. But they are also daily substitutes for paras and teachers. Typically, the positions we're looking for are in the elementaries and the preschool, because they're the only people that are sitting at the desk as the clerical. In the other schools, they can often cover if there's one person out and there's enough staff that they could do that. But in the elementaries, it's a little difficult to do that. So tonight, we wanted to bring forward, Emma and I, looking at and discussing increasing the rate tonight so that it would be in line with the other daily substitute rate so that we could get people to, when needed. Our rate of absenteeism in our elementary clerks is very low, so it's not a huge amount of absences that we're covering, but just being able to find people that will be able to do that for us.
Okay, committee members, in order for us to open up the floor, I'm looking for a motion that we accept Ms. Brown's proposal to raise the clerical substitution rate.
Motion to accept?
Did you need to include the rate in the motion?
I'll ask Lorinda, yes.
Probably.
Okay, from 16.50
17,
an hour to $17 an hour.
from $17 an hour to $19.25 an hour.
Oh, was that Emma? Thank you.
Yes.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, so the floor is open. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Manzo, there's a question I'm anticipating you're going to ask.
Okay, so do we have funds to support this increase in
I'll let Emma.
compensation?
Yes, so as Erin mentioned, our absentee rate is quite low, and so the anticipated additional cost is anticipated to be less than $1,000 this year for this increase, and we do anticipate having funding available within our clerical substitute budget line already to cover that.
Thank you. And again, these are just for elementary positions?
Yeah, the 5 elementary schools and the preschool.
And so is it you just don't fill when a middle or high school clerk is out, or I guess other clerks in the central administration, you just don't fill those with substitutes?
Generally, we can cover, because there's multiple people at the high school and at the middle school that could cover for a daily absence. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Silva, do you have any questions? Or Ms. Flowers?
I'm all set. No questions.
I also don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. We'll do a roll call. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
myself, yes. That motion passes 3-0. Let me see what is on. Sorry, I'm taking my little meeting minutes over
That's it, right?
here because we have to do roll call votes. And usually Ms. Coelho does that part for me. So let's see, budget transfers is our next, no, I lied. Gifts to schools, which is this tab on my screen. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger for you guys. We have a number of gifts to schools. They were in your packet for the people in the room. Total of $1,009.22 this month. Let's see, right about there. I think that's as big as it can get. I'm looking for a motion to approve with gratitude, as Ms. Abel reminds me to say, this batch of gifts to schools.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Manzo.
Second?
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any questions?
No.
You say, no?
Well, okay, just for people who may not know, so the high school donations are in memory of an individual, and maybe someone should say something about that individual?
I would be happy to. So There are a number of donations to the high school for their athletic program in memory of Mr. Auburn Wilson. I hope I pronounced his name right. And from what I understand, he was a BHS super fan, and he attended every BHS Thanksgiving Day game since the 60s. He was a supporter of all of our sports program and was the scorekeeper for the lacrosse team for over 10 years. And if you've attended a BHS game in the last 20 years, you would have seen him and his group of distinguished gentlemen cheering on the Panthers. And so heartfelt condolences to his family and friends, and immense gratitude for them thinking of us in this time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? There's a motion on the table. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
myself, yes, that passes 3-0. Our next item is budget transfers. We have two of them. I'll put the first one on the screen, 715. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger. Miss Emma, would you, actually, before you do that, may I have a motion to approve this budget transfer?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Miss Emma, would you like to speak to this one?
Absolutely. So as you likely know, we do have teacher fellows from Endicott in a number of our schools. This year, Centerville was not able to get a fellow, but North Beverly was. However, the budget had been allocated originally that Centerville would have a fellow, and so we're just transferring the budget from the Centerville fellows line to the North Beverly budget line.
Fantastic. Do I have any questions? Anybody in the room, including Miss Flowers? I don't want you to feel left out just because you don't get to vote.
I never do. Thank you. I never do feel left out. I didn't mean I never do vote. I do vote.
Okay.
But I'm
I
good
don't
for now,
see
thanks.
hands. I don't hear any voices. I'll call the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
myself, yes, that passes 3-0. That budget transfers out. Here's our next budget transfer, number 796. I'll make it a little bigger on the screen. Before we ask Miss Emma to speak to this, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo and Dr. Silva. Miss Emma, would you like to speak to this, please?
Absolutely. So as we were closing out our ESSER funds, which we were very sad to say goodbye to on September 30th of this year, we were doing our final closeout, and we had the ability to transfer some software costs that were originally budgeted within the appropriated budget to the ESSER funding, which left us with a little bit of budget availability. And so we are transferring that budget availability from those transferred expenses to cover some initiatives within AD. So we were talking earlier this evening a little bit before the meeting started about bus drivers, and so we are looking to recruit more bus drivers, and so we have transferred some money into our advertising line, also some money into our office supplies and legal supplies, as we are in a contract year. And so this is just a little bit of housekeeping, anticipating some needs, getting to do some things with that budget availability.
Okay, fantastic. Any questions, people in the room?
Nope, I'm good.
No questions.
Calling the roll, Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
myself, yes, that passes 3-0. Get that off my screen. Hold, please. Our next item on the docket are two policies. They're on my hold, please. We'll bring them over to this screen. The first policy is DIB. Okay, I lied because that's not the first letter that I said. Here comes DIB. Hold, please. Also not DI. Oh, yeah, there it is. DIB. So these policies, I'll remind people, especially all the people who are watching from home, that we have a policy that says we will review all of our policies within a 5-year window. And so our wonderful administrative assistant, Ms. Donna Bergeron, queues the policies up for us. So we're on this regular basis of seeing a few. Any given meeting, we'll see a few. There's another way policies can come in front of us, which is that the body at the state level says, hey, something has changed, either at the state level or the federal federal level, and we need to look at these kind of out of our normal cycle, a more prioritized kind of thing. So both of these policies this evening come on our regular rotation, so there's no track changes. If in fact MASC recommended we make a change because of something that happened at the state or the federal level, you'd be seeing a version that was marked up. And so, in fact, there are no markings on these policies. They're simply for us to look at and say, do we think we want to update it in any way, shape, or form, or are we good with it? And if we're good with it, we kind of put a little stamp on it that says, you can see some of these other ones. Okay, we did these revisions on these dates, and we may in fact see just that a line that instead of revising, we just adopted, meaning we left it as is, and we so the last time we looked at this particular policy was July of 2023. Okay, so that's my introduction to how do we handle policies in general. And there's a whole group of policies that come to us as finance and facilities. And so I am looking for a motion relative to policy DIB to accept it as is, and and then we'll handle if anybody wants to make any changes.
So I'll make the motion to accept DIB as is.
Second.
Okay, and now that is on the floor, does anybody in the room have any issues with DIB as it is, or would you like to see it changed?
Looks good to me.
No changes for me.
Okay, and then I should add as well, our committee then votes it quote unquote out, whether we vote it out as is or whether we vote it with changes. And then it goes to the committee of the whole, and they get a first reading and then a second reading, and then they vote on it as well. So Mr. Manzo, this was your chance, but Dr. Silva, you'll get another chance to see this at both the first reading and the second reading in our committee of the whole. So having said that, I'm calling the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, so that's DIB. Our second policy this evening is EBCD, emergency closings. Sorry, Dr. Trocheck, I'm sure that the hair on the back of your neck, like maybe this gives you a little bit of trauma, the fact that we might have to close our schools for various reasons. We probably don't want to be thinking about that just yet. So it's a little unfortunate that this particular policy is in front of us this evening, but probably better that we talk about it now, and then we're prepared. Everybody knows what our policy is relative to school closings. I'm looking for a motion. Again, this came to us just on the regular rotation. There's no track changes. I'm looking for a motion to accept it as is, and then we'll discuss possible changes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. You guys, maybe I'll have to bring throat lozengers because you had to do all the talking this evening. Do either of you or anybody else in the room see any problems with this particular policy or want any changes?
No.
I'm good with it as well. I just wanted to mention that I like the way the policy is written in that it gives the superintendent the ability to close school or schools, when needed. But it's thoughtfully written in that it has to be something that really puts the health and well-being of students and staff in danger, and that if something does occur, you don't have to necessarily close all the schools. You can do it, at a case-by-case basis. So again, I think it's a very thoughtful policy. So I'm glad you actually have it.
Cool. Lorinda, the policy chair, will take that compliment. Although I didn't write it, right? So I just inherited a whole bunch of policies from people like you, Mr. Manzo, who served well before.
This actually predated me. I predated this policy. So this is the first and only time I've ever seen this policy.
Oh, very cool. All right. Any other comments in the room? Comments, questions, concerns about this particular policy? Okay, seeing none, I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Kim, for panning out when I do that so I can see the room. I'm calling the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
And myself, yes, that passes 3-0. All right, we'll get that off my screen. Our next thing is, and look, we're actually so much better on schedule than we were last meeting. Our budget review. So we have revenues and expenses. If you'll hold on one second, the expense. There's our expenses. So we'll do revenues first. It's a much shorter, easier to display document. Miss Emma, I would like to give you the chance, if you want to say anything about this before I open it to the members of the committee to potentially ask questions.
Absolutely. I think really the most notable thing is that our revenue collection right now to date is on track for where we would expect it to be at this point in the year. So no cause for concern.
Love to hear that. I'm looking around the room. Does anybody have any questions for Miss Emma about the revenue report?
Mr. Manzo has his hand up.
Please, Mr. Manzo.
So it's good to hear that the revenues are coming in as anticipated. The one thing I did have, just drew my attention, was the fact that we're using a little over $4 million in carryover revenue, if I'm looking at that correctly. And so that must draw down those accounts pretty low. And is that an area which you'd be concerned with?
So we are drawing down that amount. That is sort of best practice, though, to draw your carry forward and accumulate in the current year for then the upcoming budget cycle. So that part I'm not entirely heavily concerned about. When it does come to things like our circuit breaker account using more than just the prior year's accumulation, which is this year's situation, right? So we carry forward a balance, and circuit breaker is our circuit breaker, which is our special education tuition and expense reimbursement from the state. We are only allowed to carry forward 1 year's award or reimbursement amount. So we would have to spend that whole amount, but where we then are currently budgeted to draw from into this year's amount as well is something that we do want to be mindful of, because that does mean that there will be less available to us in FY26. So that is just something, as we go through the budget process, we'd probably want to have some further conversations about.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Silva, do you have any questions before I call on myself?
Not at the moment.
Fantastic. So Ms. Emma, so that number there, the 4,193,820, that is last year's reimbursement, or is it last year's reimbursement plus some from this year?
So that number down there is the total for all of our revolving funds, the carry forward allocation. So the 3,207,000 is the circuit breaker figure, which is, I think, about maybe $600 shy of what our total reimbursement was last year, because we do also sort of play that game of making sure we don't carry forward more than our award, because then it does have to get then released back to the city and into free cash and would not stay in our account. So we do walk a very fine line there, but that is just about our entire allocation from last year. And we have budgeted in our FY25 budget $4,300,000 coming from circuit breaker, which is the number to just the left of that 3,200,000 there.
Okay, so that means that's so 1,100,000 approximately of this year's money we're going to spend this year, and that means we have 1,100,000 less for next year.
That is correct. And this year they have announced or sort of published what the reimbursement is. Our reimbursement this year is $3,600,000, so it is up a little bit. It's about a 43% reimbursement of our special education costs from FY24.
Okay, and relative to the other, these other accounts, like our SEVIS, are we usually a year ahead on that as well?
Yes, so SEVIS, we do generally collect those fees a year in advance as well. As students make commitments to come here and they find host families, we tend to collect the revenues for this current fiscal year and the spring of last fiscal year. So the $144,000 and change that you are seeing in the forecasted and to reported, those were the fees collected for students on campus today and this fiscal year. Those generally do not increase much, but if we do have students that come just for the spring semester, we could see additional receipts for this fiscal year in this fiscal year.
Dr. Churchak has her hand up.
Oh, please.
I just want to jump in because Emma was not here when we were having some of our discussions last year. When we talked about the OSD increases and some of the increases in special education costs, we were clear that while we aimed always to fully carry our circuit breaker over, that we knew we were going to be dipping in, and the number that we had from Jean, I think back then, was 66%. We thought we would be at about 66%, if you remember in those budget discussions that we had. And that is what has come to fruition. So rather than us being carrying over the full circuit breaker, we'll probably only be carrying over 66% of our circuit breaker into FY26. So while it's not a concern in that we're going to run out of money, but it's a concern to me as I think about budgeting forward, because we had always a little more latitude within our special education costs. If you think about what we use those funds for, it's unanticipated out of district placements. I think Mr. Manzo will remember a year when we had 14 students move in out of district placements. So sometimes things happen, and this was what we had been cautioning all along. It's not unexpected. Emma's exactly right. We are sort of on track to where we said we were going to be, but I just want to remind everybody that where we said we were going to be was not as great as where we would love to be. So again, I think that this is an important discussion right now as we begin to think about entering into budget season. It's always important to keep in mind. And we are also, if you remember, Jean reported that we had a really large revolving carryover in school choice, a lot due to the ESSER funds that had been available to us. So we were planning on spending down some of that. So we are also not carrying as large of a revolving school choice into the FY26 budget. None of these are concerns for our FY25. Well, we have a lot of uncertainties, as we all know, in our FY25 budget, but these are not unexpected or not planned for, but I think I appreciate your question, Mr. Manzo, because it does reflect that these numbers are different than we have been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years. And the same, Ms. Visnick around the SEBIS, same thing, right? So the same situation stands there. So you're right to be noticing and picking on those, but again, they're not impacting our FY25 health, but they will have some pretty big implications as we go into FY26, so it's important for everybody to keep that in mind as we move forward.
So, since we're already on it, so once we carry over or use these carryover funds, particularly in school choice, in SEVIS, in SPED tuition, do you have a sense of how much is left in those revolving accounts going forward? Because to me, it looks like, and this is following up on Ms. Visnick's question, it looks like you're using 3 years' worth of SEVIS funds in 1 year.
Yep, so we do, and we are. I think we have had several conversations already as we plan, looking at what are we carrying, what are the offsets that we're using that SEVIS fund for. Some of them right now are positions, and what are those positions going to look like? Will we need to, absorb them into the appropriated budget, or are they positions that, I'll give you a good example. So on school choice, 2 of the teaching positions are an added 5th grade team that we won't need maybe in 5th grade next year, might need in 6th grade, but then it will cycle out. So then, we purposefully put them on school choice knowing that they weren't going to last forever. So some of those things will age out, so to speak, or whatever. But no, we're watching it, and but we also, it's also not, we can't really carry revolvings that are too large because they're meant to be used for student outcomes, and that's what we're using them for. So it's a fine line.
Thank you.
So I'll use this opportunity to say we're going to be looking at that very soon. I was trying to find my email with the dates. It's that time of year when we head into financial forecasting. So I believe Dr. Silva and myself will be representing the school committee and the financial forecasting this year. And hopefully Mr. Manzo will see you there as a member of the mayor's appointments. I find very helpful. The F&F committee will also appoint a resident rep. And it's helpful to have people who have been, hanging out with their sleeves rolled up and digging through the numbers, as you know, to be on that committee to try to get the big picture, get a handle on the big picture for the whole city. So those dates are coming up. If you haven't been invited yet, I can forward you the dates, but it would probably be useful for you to mark your calendar.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll find that email. I'm gonna right now. We're gonna switch over to any other questions on. We're gonna switch to the expense report. Okay, so I have the expense report. This is like a 40-some page document. So I have the first page up. If anybody wants me to spin to a specific page, or we can, if you brought any questions, raise your hand. Or Ms. Emily, you want to speak to this, kind of like you spoke to the revenues report, and then we'll take questions after that.
Absolutely. So again, our spending is generally on track for where we anticipate it to be at this point in the year, right? Of course, we have some great unknowns as we continue through negotiations, but for where we stand right now, we are in great shape. We are keeping an eye on some of our B&G stuff. I know, Lorinda, you've sent some questions, but otherwise, we also too have our building rental revolving fund to help, in areas, especially related to B&G, where we may not have sufficient funding given the needs of any given year. But other than that, nothing that at this point in time is cause for concern or something that feels, worth raising.
All right, so I'm looking around the room to my fellow committee members and/or President Flowers. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the expense report?
Dr. Silva's hand is up.
Please, Dr. Silva.
So I'm scanning down this budget report, and I'm seeing percentages ranging from over 100% down to 15%. Can you explain where the percentages ideally should be and why in some cases there are, why is this wide range? Why are we seeing this wide range?
Absolutely. So it really varies depending on the line, right? For things like supplies and materials, we do anticipate that the bulk of the spending happens at the front of the year. So those make sense. Also, that percentage is reflective of both expenditure and encumbrance. So there are things that we knowingly and anticipate them coming down the pipe, and so we encumber them so that we can keep a mind to what we know will come. So there are lines in there where we may have not actually incurred any actual expense yet, but we know that it is coming down the pipe. So right, we will undergo our end of year audit, so likely sometime in January, but those funds are likely encumbered similarly. So those ones you tend to see up front because we know they're coming. We want to make sure that we reserve the funds to be able to do that. Salaries is really where, especially because we do not encumber our salaries, that would be the place where you're really keeping an eye on those percentages. And those will fluctuate depending on if they are year-round position or school year positions. We do have some school year positions like our Unit B folks who are school year but are actually paid over the course of the year. And so those ones, right, we are 4/12 of the way through the year. And so you'd expect to see, those spent about the 33%, right around that third. And then, but for our school year folks, our paraprofessionals, where they are paid over 22 paychecks, they are a little bit closer to that 20%. 2/10. But our teachers, because they do get that summer check, which is that balloon check to carry them through the summer months, equivalent to 4 paychecks, those percentages do tend to be a little bit lower. You might also see a couple of salary lines right now that are looking a little bit higher. We do have some grant-funded positions, especially like our Title I grant, that we do not charge to the grant until it's fully blessed and approved by DESE, but we will, the date goes back to when we originally submitted the grant. And so we carry that in the budget until those get the final stamp from DSE, and then we will transfer those funds back to the grant. So you may see a little bit of that fluctuation in there too.
Okay, and then the only other comment, I just noticed that snow removal is 100% spent, if I'm reading this correctly, with the 113,000. And there's a line for 10,000 that looks like it's in reserve. So is there any concern there?
I believe that it is fully encumbered. I am scrolling. Do you have what page you're on so I can just confirm?
6. Page 6.
Page 6 and then page 7. So page 7 is the one where there's 100% spent, and page 6 is where there's 0% or 10,000 in reserve. If you search snow, there's 2 spots.
All right. So the snow landscaping, that is currently encumbered. So that was them just sort of doing their housekeeping and putting through the purchase order so that as those bills do come in, we can pay them in a timely fashion. So they've just encumbered the entire budget, but nothing has been expended yet. So again, that's really just sort of that
All right.
housekeeping. And then the line above that would be snow removal salaries for our staff. So where the other would be like ice melt, things like that, that would be our, time and labor costs incurred for snow removal on the school side. And that we do not encumber payroll.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Right, so I've tried to highlight on the screen, this column of the report is where we see that something has been encumbered versus the column just to its left is whether we've actually expended any. So again, we're probably making Dr. Chorchak very nervous. We're talking about snow again. We haven't spent any of the snow removal money, right? That's this column. That's this number here. But we've encumbered it all in this column, which is maybe because somebody was reading the Farmer's Almanac and we're supposed to maybe get snow this winter. Who knows? All right, I'm looking around the room. Does anybody have any other questions? All right, I think we can have a couple of minutes break then before we go into our next meeting, the meeting of the whole. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Fantastic, and we're going to call the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
myself, yes. Thank you very much. Thanks again, BevCam, and to everybody who came to the meeting. Thank you, Ms. Flowers.
Thank you for having me, as always.
All right, and we'll meet again in a month.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is the Beverly School Committee Committee of the Whole meeting, and today is Wednesday, October 23rd. Can't believe we're already in October and almost at the end. It's 2024, and we are meeting in a hybrid remote fashion this evening using a remote meeting platform that's provided at no cost to the district. We appreciate our friends at BevCam who are also broadcasting the open portions of our meeting and streaming them as well. You can catch the broadcast on Channel 6 or on High Definition 1073 or find their YouTube government channel online. Thank you, BevCam. Beginning on June 16th of 2021 with the Chapter 20 Acts of 2021, which have been twice extended and now further extended until March 31st, 2025, local governments are granted provisions to, among other things, hold meetings using remote meeting technology and suspend the need for the quorum and chair to physically be present. It does ask our body to use technological methods that allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval from the Attorney General's office for remote participation of members. However, when this act expires in March, the chair and a quorum will physically need to be present. Tonight we have a quorum physically present. We are joined online by School Committee Person Visnick, and we do anticipate the mayor to be joining us shortly. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting, which means that members of the public do not have an opportunity to address the body. The next opportunity will be at our November 13th regular meeting. For public comment, please send your thoughts or a request for the remote link or plan to be here in person on November 13th. You can send your requests in advance to residentvoice@beverlyschools.org or use the sign-up sheet at the podium at our next meeting. We do ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and please remember this is an address of the body. We will not be replying. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will be conducting a full roll call attendance in a moment so that we can settle the record on who is participating and to ensure that we can hear and see all participants. Please remember that any audio or video that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. Now, let me conduct the roll. In person, we are joined by Dr. Jeffrey Silva,
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza,
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
Remotely, we are joined by Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel. We are also joined at the table in person by Mayor Michael Cahill. Absent this evening is Ms. Coelho. Thank you. We are also joined in person by Dr. Suzanne Chirocek,
Here.
Dr. Dorothy Flaherty,
Here.
Dr. Andre Morgan, Ms. Erin Brown, Ms. Emma Puglisi, Ms. Bethany Splansky. Also present, Mark Thomas from the high school. I think that covers it off. We also have a number of students and caregivers in the audience, as well as our educators. So thank you so much for making time to be with us this evening. Our first order of business will actually be the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I might ask Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, would you lead us in the pledge? Thank you. The flag is up here.
Will do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate that. I'll turn my camera on. Oh, it's a little close. Okay. Next, our agenda is calling for the approval of our meeting records from our last Committee of the Whole meeting on September 25th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Were there any edits or corrections that any school committee member would like to make? I'm not seeing any edits or corrections, so I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick. I think that was a yes. And Ms. Abel, yes. 6-0. We will enter those into the record. And now, Dr. Chirocek and Mr. Thomas, if you would please introduce our student guests this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Thomas, for joining me up here. First of all, I'm Dr. Sue Chirocek, and I'm the superintendent, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this award and what it is and why it's given. So, as the educational leader in each community, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents has designed an award for academic excellence that we present to students from Beverly High School every year. These awards are given to high school students who have distinguished themselves in pursuit of excellence during their high school careers. It is intentionally designed to make these presentations at the beginning of the senior year for the students selected. This allows them for the inclusion of this unique citation in their credential package and their counselor recommendation. Arrangements for the distribution are made every year in fall. This year, Mr. Thomas is here to share with you our 2 recipients, so I'm excited to turn it over to him.
We're so very proud of both recipients. I think this will be the first of many recognitions throughout their senior year. Our first is Miranda Cotter Holland. She can come on up. Congratulations, Miranda.
Thank you.
And our next recipient is Madeline Young.
Just as Mr. Thomas said, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of both of you throughout the year. Thank you all for coming and joining us, and congratulations again. It's really a pleasure to award that to both of you, so thank you.
I'd like to call the school committee into a brief recess for 5 minutes so we can congratulate our students. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for that brief recess. It's always exciting to see our students and be able to wish them well. Next, Dr. Trocek, would you kick off your superintendent report? Thank you.
I actually have a very short superintendent report this evening. Sorry, thank you. I have a shorter superintendent report this evening. We're going to speak about professional development and the PD day that's scheduled for November 5th. I want to preface that with, as we always do, we try to make sure that we're clear and concise and connect everything to the goals that we have. And you will see this slide from me often, as you did in the years past. But these are our 3 goals for this year: designing our equity continuum, diversity, belonging, inclusivity, and equity. We have a second goal for empowering educators and a third goal for innovative practices. And so tonight, we want to highlight a little bit about our goal for empowering educators. We know that we hope to engage teachers, administrators, and other staff at all levels in professional development to create inclusive, supportive, and engaging learning environment that caters to diverse learning needs. So we thought it would be a good opportunity tonight, in advance of our Professional Development Day on November 5th, to share with all of you what we have planned and how the day will work. And just a reminder, again, around our focus areas within the area of professional development, we're really focusing on high impact instructional strategies. So hoping that all of the professional development that we offer and the opportunities that we share out to our educators meet the, goal of taking a look to support staff to develop a deep understanding of effective, high-impact instructional strategies and how to use them to transform student engagement and performance. So that's the focus area under which the umbrella under which this will go. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Flaherty, as she is the architect and mastermind behind most of the work that we do in the area of professional development. So, Dot, I'm going to turn it over to you.
And I'll say I couldn't do this without the help of Judy Miller, and we also have a lot of input from our teacher coaches and our administrative team. We're excited about the day. We really tried to approach it as a way to meet our goals and have a nice blend between some information we wanted to make sure everybody received, and also allowing some educator choice within the day as well. And you'll see that the topics, we really tried to connect around our goals of technology, mental health and SEL, and innovative instructional practices in the classroom. You'll see, oh, your color's changed. You'll see that the colored pieces are either a large keynote, which is the first block from 8 to 9:30. We will have all staff, and the entire district is welcome to attend. And it's going to be on a very kind of new and hot topic, but one that we're all facing now around AI and how we can learn more about it, learn the challenges, but also ways that we can embrace it in the educational process. And then our keynote, Greg Kuliak, will also be doing a workshop. So we have the keynote in the morning, and then we have 2 90-minute sessions throughout the day that will allow for teachers to make choices. And you'll see that some of the key workshops we're running twice, and for people that had enough people that they could do it twice, but then also attend a session on their own, so that if you wanted to attend both of our mini keynotes, which are the other 2 things that you see there in the pink, Carrie Stack, she presented and was very well received on opening day. We received a lot of feedback and survey results and emails asking if we could have her back again, and we were able to get her. And so she's going to be doing part 2 of Power of the Positive, that did a lot of work around self-care and SEL for the individual educator. And now she's going to do a brief kind of recap of that, but then move into using the CASTLE framework to talk about how teachers and educators can implement SEL within their classroom. And the goal is for every teacher to walk away with several strategies that they can take back to their classroom and implement. We then also had the 2 presenters, Vanessa Ford and Rebecca Kling, at our leadership retreat this summer, and they were amazing and very well received and had a lot of very good, tangible strategies that we can share with educators. One of the presenters is a local parent, and they wrote a award-winning book for creating schools where transgender and non-binary, and we asked them to broaden that category to include all LGBTQIA students can thrive in school. And as we look at one of our goals of creating an environment where everybody feels like they belong, this was an outstanding session, and we really hope that a lot of educators will embrace that. Both of those sessions will run twice, so that you have the ability to go to both if you wanted, or if you want to go to one of the smaller mini workshops that are being run by our teachers or administrators, then you could do one of those and then still see one of our mini keynotes. So then you'll see that session 1 will run from 9:45 to 11:15. We have Mark Thomas is running a session on trauma-informed classrooms. We will have a session for math that is being run, the math and science. This is going to be a co-taught session with Jennifer Thomas and Caitlin Belezer. They attended some training this summer around how to support our L students and our multi-language language learners in the classroom for math and science. And so they will have some really great strategies for teachers to walk away with. We will then have what we tried to do was at least two categories at each level: high school, middle school, and elementary. But some of them are open to the whole district. But we'll have that when we send the survey out to teachers to sign up. They'll know what category people can, grade levels are it's available to. So Lauren Oxford is going to be doing some work for middle school teachers around unpacking their new ELA curriculums, and then also using backwards design in writing and how to approach the new writing that they'll be doing with that new curriculum. She'll be offering that twice, and James Grocke will be doing some work that they've learned from TNTP around implementing math language routines and working with giving some information, but then also both of these sessions being very hands-on so that teachers can walk away with strategies or the beginning of lesson plans that they can then take back to their classroom. At the elementary level, our coaches, teacher coaches, literacy coaches are running 2 sessions. The first session for session 1 will be for K-3 teachers, and it's going to be a refresher around foundations, which works around phonics and fluency. And 3 of our coaches will be doing that, and then they'll be able to leave to go to a session, and then the other literacy coaches will do a different session for the second block. Bethany Spolansky will be doing, our math coaches will be doing a building fact fluency session, and that will run twice throughout the day. Bethany will be available and doing some overview of the new IEP process for individuals that want to come to that. And then we have some specialized trainings that are going to happen that are, for the most part, virtual, but they're for specialized categories. So it's very hard to find for our music and some of our special area, our encore areas, trainings that are related specifically to their content area. And we were actually able to find one that Adam gave to us that he ran across, and I did some research, and we contracted with Culturally Responsive Music Education 101. This will be a 3-block, so they're actually going to have 2 blocks on this day, and then they will have one more that they can work on early release days throughout the year. And it's all around culturally responsive classrooms through music. So that is going to be a really good opportunity, and the teachers were really excited to have that. I'm interested to watch it because they are in the process of broadening this to include art teachers as well, and so we'll be able to offer that to them over the summer or next year. Then we'll be doing a training for our administrative assistants and building clerks that work with registration, and Dr. Morgan will be leading that. And it's going to be doing some work around building equity in the registration process. And that also goes back to the belonging and making sure that everybody feels like they belong from the moment that they come to register at our schools. And then all of our nurses are working together on a program that will run all day, and it's virtual, but it's around supporting students with diverse medical needs. On the second session, which will run from 11:30 until 1 o'clock, our 2 mini keynotes will be replayed. Paul Casey, I've actually already seen his presentation, and it's going to be outstanding. He's going to do some hands-on work around AI and ethical boundaries for its effective use with teachers, and so that's going to be a little bit of knowledge. Mark Thomas and Paul and 3 or 4 teachers went to a workshop earlier this week, and it's one that will continue throughout the year. They'll actually come and do some work at the school as well around AI, and then there'll also be a hands-on component where teachers can get in and do some work in a couple of different programs. Ellen Komsky is going to offer a session that she did this summer around book widgets, which is a form of technology, an app that teachers can use that helps them to integrate into Google Classroom, and it's a way to create some assessments and games for vocabulary and a whole bunch of different ways to make learning engaging and fun, but also a way to get some very important information across using technology. Lauren Oxford and Jim Grocky will redo their workshops. And then the literacy coaches, the other half, will be offering a session for teachers in grades 3 through 5. And this is around some test-taking strategies within the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. And we will rerun the fact fluency for math. And again, the specialized trainings, the nurses will continue with their training. The second session for music teachers will be around, I didn't change this here, but it's around creating a belonging classroom in music. That's the second session. And then our transportation department will be doing their annual safety training and some training around bus rate. And that's kind of an overview. We still have, I'd say we're probably about 90% there. We've still got a few little holes that we're trying to work on. And in particular, we'd like to see a content-specific option for our preschool teachers. So that's one thing that we're still working on.
I had a quick question. Is this going to be held at the high school or
Oh,
at the middle school?
good question. We're going to all be here at the middle school, and we're staying here. In the past few years, we've let the teachers go back to their schools as long as they didn't park in the main parking lots. But knowing that the turnout is going to be really hard and they're going to be parking out into the neighborhoods, we're staying in one location. And
You answered both of my
we'll hope for
questions.
sun, but if not, we'll be reaching out. We talked about it today. We're going to ask Dana if we can get a bus run in the morning and one at the end of the day so that we can also use the high school parking lot.
Great. Are there any other questions from school committee members?
And Miss Leal's getting us healthy snacks for the break, so.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for that overview. We look forward to hearing the feedback, and yeah, thanks.
And I know some of you may be interested in AI, and you're welcome to join us for the keynote if you'd like to come, or any of the sessions, but I think the keynote would probably, although I highly also recommend Carrie Stack. The staff really loved her, so if you're around, please feel free to stop by.
Great.
That is all that I have this evening.
Okay. From the school committee chair, we're bringing forward some policies. As Ms. Visnick explained in Finance and Facilities, we are endeavoring to review all of our policies on a more regular schedule so each one can get our attention individually. For our first reading this evening, we're bringing forward 3 policies. And I apologize for the late breaking PDF file, but I just wanted to highlight that there were no changes from MASC, nothing recommended that we change, except that we are endeavoring to change the pronouns just to be more inclusive. So I've marked those. We will be bringing this back to our regular school committee meeting on November 13th. So unless anyone had any initial concerns they wanted to bring to the table at this time, we will have the opportunity at our next meeting to formally mark it as revised and reviewed, or make any additional changes. I'm not seeing any. Also on our agenda this evening are two policies that our Curriculum Instruction and Student Life Subcommittee, Standing Committee, have brought forward with their recommendation that we include them in the school committee policies. They came with the recommendation from Ellen Faulkner, who actually works with caregivers for these students, and she felt that they would be helpful resources for our district. This is technically the committee's first reading. We will also be bringing this back on the November 13th regular school committee agenda. And again, these come from recommendations from our Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and they are based on the sample policies. So unless there were any comments or concerns at this time, we will look forward to seeing those again at our next meeting.
Miss Abel,
Yes, Ms. Bisnick.
from a process point of view, when we have a new policy, so those two from Ms. Faulkner are new to us, right? And so we're going to add them to our manual, and we need to update our big spreadsheet as well, right? So I'm just saying that out loud because it's a task that perhaps falls on my plate now that I'm saying something out loud as the policy chair. But I'm worried that whether I've missed any other new ones recently. So we can take that offline, but yeah.
I think these
that
are the
needs to
first
make
two
sure we do that.
additions. Yeah, I think these are the first two additions. And we certainly rely heavily on Ms. Bergeron as well to keep us all straight. But we will take that offline and make sure that they're added to the review, assuming this fair committee approves them on November 13th to be added.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The next agenda item, the chair put our periodic reminder that we set our own agendas. This particular format of having a regular school committee and a committee of the whole has been long established, although we've provided tweaks throughout the years. If there were any members that had any suggestions for how we might revisit our agenda, or any of the standing items that we include on our regular committee meetings or our committee of the whole, this would be an opportunity for public discussion. In reviewing the MASC policies, I actually note that the MASC has removed the policy on agenda formats and also has recently revised its policy on allowing public speak at school committee meetings. So those were two of the items that sort of prompted my recollection that this is something that the school committee generally will discuss at the table. I'm wondering if there's any change requests? No? Okay, we can always bring it back to another agenda if somebody has.
I just feel like we might have to think about that a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. We can put it on a future agenda if anyone wants to just tell the chair when we should put that on the agenda again. And then for, yes, Ms. Visnick.
Sorry. I think because there's some people that that did not serve under our old kind of format, right? We used to meet every single week and we used to, yeah, I just think that there are other options. I don't want people to feel like we have to be married to what we do now just because it's what people are used to doing. And so I will say that we used to have a different format. We used to not stack our meetings and we used to meet every week. And so I'll just throw that out there I certainly don't want to go back to every week for sure, but just to put an idea in people's heads that alternate setups are possible.
Right. And in our last session, we did agree to continue stacking the meetings for the spring, but this is, again, just another opportunity to think about how we conduct our business. Dr. Silva has his hand up.
Can you speak to the topic of public speaking at the school committee and how it's been in the past and how it was changed?
Sure.
Just so that we understand.
Yeah, I think during the COVID time, it evolved to allow for remote participation, and then it also evolved into the chair reading into the record emails that we receive at an email that we established during those times. We had to have a mechanism for people to get a link to join our remote meetings, and that same email, residentvoice@beverlyschools.org, was established. I think, I don't know if Ms. Visnick attended last year at the MASC conference. I know I did. There was a presentation about public speak, and there have been a number of case law that I've shared with the committee as we receive them as memorandums about our responsibility to First Amendment rights and our limited ability to stop a public speaker. I think you might remember in recent history, we've had issues with public speaking and respecting the 3-minute time limit, also disclosing real name and real address. So that's sort of a gist. I don't know if it would be helpful for me to share more information from MASC's presentation, but the school committee either has to allow full public speak within the parameters that we outline in our agenda, which is our 3-minute rule and real name, real address, or we can not have public address. And then our attorney was actually curious as to why the chair reads emails into the record. And so we've had some counsel on that as well. So.
Okay.
Okay. We'll leave that for a future meeting if anyone wishes to bring it forward again on an agenda. In terms of upcoming meetings and dates, I would like to reflect that the negotiating subcommittee has a planned session on October 30th, as well as November 12th, with our BTA units A and C. We also have a regular school committee meeting, as I mentioned, November 13th. And then because of the Thanksgiving holiday, we have shifted our second set of meetings to November 20th. So you'll need to make sure the 13th and 20th are marked on your calendars. I've also been advised by the financial forecasting chair that some dates have been proposed, including November 13th, which will present a slight challenge for our members who participate. I will ask that. That's actually a wonderful suggestion. I will include you on that email back to the chair and to Mr. Perry about who will be participating and that conflict on that first date. I think that's it for meetings. I don't think we have any other, no policy committee meetings scheduled at this point. Okay. That's the end of our agenda this evening at a ripe old 8:05. The chair would now like to move that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapters 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 will be to review and approve our meeting records from executive session meetings of October 9th, 2024. And Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. This does require a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel. By a vote of 6-0, the chair states that we are now entering into executive session at 8:06 p.m. and that we will not return to open session. Thank you, BevCam, and thank you for those watching at home. Have a great evening.